Hey there, we've got a fresh batch of common Magic the Gathering cards to sift through and find any ones that might be good in the Pauper format. It's Common Knowledge, the show where I do, well, exactly that. Let's see what our first card is, and if you haven't watched the show before, you'll get a good idea of what we're doing here. Rise to the Challenge is 1 in a red for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. I feel like we've had a billion cards like this. I'm going to write down Sure Strike. And I feel like Sure Strike is the same mana cost, but it gives +3/+0 in first strike instead. Am I right about that? I am. So Sure Strike just is better than Rise to the Challenge completely. And that doesn't bode well for Rise to the Challenge's how it's going to fare here. I think we gotta give it something pretty bad. I mean, it's an okay card in a vacuum, but when you have a card that is just infinitely better than you are, strictly better than you are, some might say, um, and that card also doesn't see any play. I'm not here saying Sure Strike is some Pauper staple. So a card that is not even as good as a card that is not a Pauper staple, it's not going to do well for you. I think we'll go for like a 2.4. No, less than that. 2.3. That feels a little better to me. And we'll go to Plasma Jockey, which is 3 in a red for a 3/1 Lizard Warrior. Whenever this creature attacks, target creature an opponent controls can't block this turn. And it also has Blitz for 2 in a red, which means if you cast the spell for its Blitz cost, it gains haste, and when this creature dies, you draw a card. You sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. I like Blitz. I think Blitz is a cool ability. Cantrips, like any creature you have has a cantrip to it. Usually those spells have some sort of enters trigger or dies trigger or attacks trigger to get that single use value, but you do get the value and then it goes away. So it is a little bit like a Mole Drifter in that way, that evoke style idea from Lorwyn. And I think that's cool. This one, when it attacks, target creature and opponent controls can't block. That's okay. It certainly depends on the opponent. If you have an opponent who's playing some kind of go wide strategy, this is not as useful. If you have an opponent who is playing Mono Blue Terror and they've got their Tolarian Terrors out, you can't really target those as easily. So you're like, that's probably not going to work there either. There are some decks that this could probably go pretty strongly against. Maybe against something like a Tron deck, maybe like a Monster Tron, which doesn't have as many creatures out on the board. You can force one of them not to be able to block and then potentially get in for more damage. Overall, though, this is a 4-mana 3/1, and I don't love that. And even if you blitz it in, you just get a single mana reduction off it. It does draw you a card after it dies when you blitz it, and that's okay. But yeah, I'm big fan of the art, not a big fan of the card though. So we'll kind of split the difference on that one, and we'll give this a 2.5. 2.5 feels too high, but we'll stick with that. Careful Study is a single blue mana for a sorcery. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. It doesn't get much more Magic the Gathering than that. This is a solid card, as shown by both its price, $3, $5, $3, $3, $10 for the Secret Lair version, the Slimer Secret Lair version. Okay. But also, hey, this was in World Champ decks in 2002 and 2003. So like people played this card and did well with it. The obvious deck you can think of is a blue terror deck, some sort of blue terror, and it's easy to see why. It's really nice to be able to draw a couple cards, discard a couple cards, pick whatever those cards are, and then this sorcery also goes to the graveyard. So that is probably upping your instant and sorcery count to get your serpents out quicker. Just makes a lot of sense. There is also pretty obvious card to compare this to. This is kind of like this is technically a worse Faithless Looting. This card came before Faithless Looting, but Faithless Looting having the flashback makes it a little bit more useful. But that is in red. And this is in blue. This doesn't get played in mono blue terror decks. Let's be clear about that. You're going to end up going for thought scours and mental notes, and we talked about this in the last episode too. If you want to hear me go into not really liking mental note as a card, but we have a bunch of these other blue cards that are like right there. They're so close. And again, we talked about one on the last episode of that was Otherworldly Gaze. Like that's also a really cool card that just doesn't quite make the cut in those mono blue terror decks. This is right there too. Like, drawing 2 cards, discarding 2 cards, that can help you filter quite a bit and put some very useful stuff in the graveyard. This is a good card. You shouldn't be you shouldn't feel shame for wanting to put this in your deck. I don't really want to spend $3 on commons, especially $3 on commons that aren't staples in the format. So that's that's probably one reason it doesn't see play, but it's just not quite there. It's so close to being there, but it's not quite there. I think I gave Otherworldly Gaze like a 5 or a 5.1 or something. I'll give this around the same score. I'll go for a 5 on this one too. Good cards, really good cards, just not quite good enough. But also, like, unlike the Sure Strike or Rise to the Challenge thing, not immediately dumpstered either by other cards. Like, it's not, there's no card that is strictly better outside of Faithless Looting, but again, that's a different color. It's hard to make that argument. Myers Malice is 3 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards, and it also has Awaken 3. You can pay 5 and a black. So if you cast a spell for 5 and a black, you also put 3+1/+1 counters on target land you control, and it becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste. It's still a land. All of this feels too expensive to me. Four mana for a Mind Rot? Get out of here. I don't even really like spending 3 mana for a Mind Rot, but spending a whole 4th mana for that, no thank you. That's terrible. Awaken is cool. I do have a deck, a Dimir deck, in fact, that is all about animating bridges, all about animating the bridge lands, the artifact lands that are indestructible. Plays something like Kenku Artificer that can put counters on artifacts. It plays the some earthbending cards, Daily Indoctrination, which can earthbend and turn your artifact lands into creature lands. And Awaken is an interesting idea. I don't like how many other cards have Awaken in the Pauper format. Awaken, and I think for my colors, I want to just do my colors on this and see where we are with that. It's only 3. Clutch Occurrence, turn target creature to its owner's hand, and Awaken 3 for 5 mana. That's not bad. I mean, it's sorcery speed. If this was instant speed, well, then it would be unsummon, and it would be better than unsummon. It'd be crazy, but that's not terrible. And Rush of Ice, tap target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, and also 5 mana to Awaken 3. Huh. I mean, that's not bad either. Still, you'd want it to be instant speed if possible, but those are kind of cool. I might have to consider those a little bit for my deck, but I don't know if they're quite good enough. And honestly, the effect here is the main effect here is pretty bad. I don't like this at all. If you're spending 6 mana and you're getting a creature out of it and you're forcing them to discard a couple cards, okay. But also, if you're this late in the game, they might not even have 2 cards in their hand. They might have spent all those cards, and then you're spending 6 mana to make a 3/3. A 3/3 out of a land that you already have, which can potentially now be cast down if you don't have if you're not putting it on like a bridge that's indestructible or something. So I'm pretty uncomfortable with this. I don't like this. It's interesting to me, but it's not good to me. And so I think we can give this thing like a 2.1. Yeah, it's really bad. When you're worse than a Mind Rot, oof, it's a tough road to hoe there. Icehide Troll is 2 and a green for a 2/3 snow creature that is a troll warrior. You can spend snow, and this creature gets +2/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn, and you tap it. um, which indestructible says damage and effects that say destroy, don't destroy it. But the more important part, and the reason I'm reading that text out, is that a snow symbol here can be paid with 1 mana from a snow source. So you can pay any color of mana, but it has to be from a snow land, a snow covered mountain, a snow covered forest, that kind of thing. A 3 mana 2/3, not very good. Three mana 2/3 that you have to continue paying mana into. I mean, it's actually not that bad. You pay this once, and it's a 4/3 with indestructible. You're going to be doing this. You can do this offensively or defensively. So you can, depending on just when the timing is, so you can attack with this creature, which would tap it, and then whether somebody blocks with it or doesn't block, I suppose it doesn't matter to you. You can then pay the snow mana and give this thing a power boost. You can do that in response to somebody trying to cast like a cast down or something, and that's pretty good too. So they would have to use their cast down in a more specific time. They'd have to do it in response to the combat step, so before you can actually attack with the creature. They don't necessarily want to do that. They want to keep their removal spell as long as possible to know when the best time to use it is. And if you play a card like this, you can potentially bait them into uh, to not having used it, thinking that they're going to have another opportunity, and now it's too late for them to do that, or baiting them in the other way, that they feel like they need to take care of this now, and maybe that gives you more options once this creature is cleared out, but the removal spell is also cleared out, so you get more flexibility on what spells you play when during the combat step. So I don't mind that. This is also can be used for blocking as well. Just because it taps the creature, if you've already assigned it as a blocker, then it still blocks whether it's tapped or not. That's pretty good too. So now again, your opponent has to go, if I need to stop this thing, if I need to try to remove this thing, I need to do it before this creature's able to block. So I have to use my cast down and have them pay the extra mana to tap this creature down and give it indestructible. And now I can swing in. No, I didn't destroy it, but I can at least swing in and know that it's tapped at this point. And I guess that goes for attacking too. You can certainly play this pre-combat, use this ability pre-combat in response to a cast down. Then you just won't be able to attack with it because it's tapped itself. So it's a little awkward on both sides. It's a little awkward for you of having to potentially spend this mana at an inopportune time for you, but it also can make inopportune times for your opponent. And those, I think that actually ends up balancing out and probably ends up being more advantageous to you. Overall, though, this is a lot of snow mana to pay, so you do have to just be in a snow deck. You're probably, if you are going to do this, I would probably want to go for a Gruul style deck, so you have access to Scred, which is one of the best snow spells in the format. So that could potentially make sense to play an Ice-Hide Troll in a deck like that and be able to spend some of that snow mana to get this effect. If you're in Gruul, though, man, you got a lot of good decks available to you already. So I don't know if Ice-Hide Troll is quite good enough to break in to that. It's a neat idea, though. I've spoken a lot about it, but I think there is some real potential to it. I'm gonna give this a decent score. I'll go for a 3.5. I think decent card. Battle Rampart is 2 and a red for a 1/3 wall with Defender. You can tap it and target creature gains haste until end of turn. I feel like we've done this before, but it's very possible that there's a ton of cards that are basically like this. I know there are lots of red cards that can tap to give a creature haste until end of turn. This one being a wall is not great, honestly. Originally from Arcadian Mass, which had different art. I do like this new art though. I think the old art's pretty good too. Here's my biggest problem with this. This is a 3 mana 1/3 with Defender. That's already a bad deal. That's not a very good stat line for this mana cost. It not being able to attack is not very good. So I'm already kind of down on it for that. And then I get that like a battle rampart from a flavor perspective, like look at the Mercadian Master. It's like it's a big wall, it's a big door, it's like a drawbridge. In fact we have like Crashing Drawbridge is another card that kind of does this, that can tap to give creature haste. So the idea is like, hey, it's the battle rampart is coming down, it's slamming down, and now your guys can have haste because they can go through it. Yeah, okay, I get it. But this is a wall. The whole point of this thing is that it's supposed to be able to defend and block. So now you tapping this on your turn, because you have to tap it on. Okay. I guess you don't have to tap it on your turn. If an opponent has a Ginger Brute and they're trying to swing it with a Ginger Brute, you can tap this and give one of your blockers haste so it can block the Ginger Brute. I guess that's the thing you can do. But most of the time, 99% of the time, you're going to be tapping this on your turn to give one of your creatures haste, which means that this thing will now be tapped down for your opponent's turn, and now it will be unable to block. I don't think paying 3 mana to give creatures haste to then not be able to block opponent's creatures is a good deal at all. I think that's really, really bad. And unless you have ways of untapping this, it's pretty darn useless. And if you have ways of untapping this, you probably have better cards that you can be using to tap or untap with than a card like this. I think this is pretty darn atrocious, and I'm going to give it a 1.3. This is bad, and I guess that is its stat line. So I maybe I'm trolling that way, but I didn't think about it when I gave it the score. It's a bad card. I think 1.3 is very well deserved for how bad this is. Sigiled Behemoth is 4 and Selesnya, so 4 green white for a 5/4 beast with Exalted. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. I kind of like Exalted as an ability. I think there's some fun things about it. I like that you could put this creature down and it has summoning sickness, so it can't attack in. But if you have another creature, because Exalted is now on the board, that creature can get bigger. So this creature does something when it comes into play and doesn't just sit there. That's cool. It can give one of your other creatures +1/+1 when it swings in. And then the next turn, this guy can swing in, and now he's a 6/5 with the Exalted trigger, turns him into a 6/5. Is that good enough? Not really. not not particularly. It's a lot of mana for mostly a vanilla creature that has no evasion whatsoever. Like, that's not going to get high marks in my book. And Selesnya also, you could ramp up into Selesnya and play stuff like this, but I think you're not going to find as much success ramping into this kind of creature than you would with lots of other good creatures in the format. This is going to be pretty disappointing. I will give it a 1.9. Next up is Stonerise Spirit, 1 and a white for a 1/2 spirit bird with flying. You can pay 4 to exile a card from your graveyard, and target creature gains flying until end of turn. I don't particularly like it. 2 mana for a 1/2 flyer is fine. We have cards that can be cheaper than this, that can fly for a single mana and are 1/2s. And then having to spend 4, exile a card from your graveyard. If it could be any graveyard, that would be still too expensive, but it would be better. So I don't love that. And then the effect it gives, just giving another creature flying, I don't think is good enough. Spending 4 mana and exiling a card out of your graveyard to give a creature flying is a big cost. Even if it is, this is definitely going for a lower hold thing where it's, hey, spells leaving your or cards leaving your graveyard maybe potentially give your other creatures buffs. The Spirit Mascot says whenever a card leaves your graveyard, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So you can spend the 4 mana, exile a card out of your graveyard. The Spirit Mascot gets bigger. Then you target the Spirit Mascot with this ability, and now it's a big creature with flying for a turn. Yeah, okay, sure, I get it. But overall, I think you're just spending too much mana for too little effect here. I don't particularly like it. I will go for a 2. Straight up 2. Next up is Dispersal Shield, which has some good art. Really good art. 1 and a blue for an instant. Counter target spell if its mana value is less than or equal to the greatest mana value among permanents you control. Um, it's not great. the you could make an argument that hey, I'm in a mono blue terror deck. I've got these serpents that cost 6 or 7 mana each. Great. These I'm going to be able to counter most of my opponent's spells that way, unless you're playing against a Tron deck, right? Maybe you're in a Tron deck. If you're in a Tron deck, you can make a little blue with your Bonder's Ornament or your Prophetic Prism, and you can play this with your I don't know, your kill ship on the board or your Maelstrom Colossus on the board, and then you can counter damn near anything. And this is a pretty good counter spell at that point. It also gives your opponent a chance to respond, and your opponent can kill your creature. They can snuff out your Tolarian Terror, or they can cast down your Maelstrom Colossus. And if that was the biggest mana value you have, maybe your next highest mana value is 2 or 3 or something, and that's not good enough. If you have the Prophetic Prism, that's a 2 mana spell. So maybe you lose your Maelstrom Colossus, you don't have a Pinnacle Kill Ship on the board anymore or something. And so it's a little bit like when you play fairies decks and you play the Spellsetter Sprite, play against the Spellsetter Sprite. Because that's an enters trigger, it gives the opponent a chance to respond to that. And Spellsetter Sprite says, it counters a spell with mana value less than or equal to the number of fairies you control. If you kill a couple of fairies, if you kill a fairy or multiple fairies before that spell is able to resolve, or before that enters trigger is able to resolve, then the count of fairies changes, and you can change the math on that one too. So the difference is that Spellsetter Sprite is awesome, is just an incredibly good card most of the time, and this is an incredibly good card some of the time. I still think it probably is a little underplayed. I think Mono Blue Terror could totally play a couple copies of this at least. Like if you already have your counter spells, if you have 4 counter spell, I think you definitely want that. It is tough when you have so many good counter spells in the format and so many targeted ones too. Spell Pierce hitting non-creature spells. You got Annul, which can hit artifacts or enchantment spells. You've got Envelop, which hits sorceries. Dispel, which hits instants. And those are every one that I mentioned there is a single mana. And those, you sideboard in the right counter spells. Blue Elemental Blast, if you're going against red spells, like those are all spells that you'd play in very specific scenarios. And Dispersal Shield is a very all-purpose spell that can work in lots of different scenarios, but it's not necessarily the best option in any of those scenarios. And that is the real problem. When you're already playing 4 counterspell, do you really need 8 counterspells in a deck that also now requires some very specific stuff on the board? If you don't have your Tolarian Terror out, this card is kind of dead in your hand. It's still a good card, and for the decks that could play it, I think they could find some real value out of it. It's just really easy to pick the generically good option, though, in those decks. And having something that's like always a 7 is better than a card that is sometimes a 10, but most of the time a 5. I think you're generally going to say, I would take the 7 that's playable all the time over that. So, I'm not saying Counterspell's a 7. Counterspell is way more than a 7. If we get to Counterspell, I'll tell you what Counterspell is. But Dispersal Shield, I'm gonna go with a 4.2. I do like the card. I also like the art. Next is Moment of Craving, 1 and a black for an instant. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn, and you gain 2 life. That seems pretty normal. Any other arts for this one? Nope. It's in Foundations. I don't remember seeing this card in any of the Foundations packs that I opened, but okay. 2 mana for a Stab. Stab is also giving a creature -2/-2 until end of turn. I don't really want to pay double for my stab, and what do I get for double my stab mana? An extra 2 life. Eh. I know we want to do other things with our life gain effects, but this isn't it. I think you can do much better than this. It's just a normally kind of okay card. We'll go for a 2.5, and we'll do a bonus card, and then we will call it a day. Crush Underfoot is 1 and a red for a Kindred instant giant. Used to be tribal, now they're calling it Kindred. Choose a giant you control. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature. I don't like this. I don't really like this at all. One, the biggest reason is that this is a bite spell, but it's a bite spell that only works for giants. So you have a very specific amount of creatures this works for. There are creatures that this works for sure, and there are changelings out there too. So you have giants in the format that can be played, but those might not be the best creatures for your decks, for whichever deck that you're playing. So now you're in a very specific kind of deck that is playing giants and wants to play giants and probably has to play a lot of giants because this card is dead in your hand if you don't have a giant. I do like that being a kindred or tribal spell, you are able to, it has the giant subtype. So if you are able to search for a giant with something like a giant harbinger, you can tutor up this card instead of a creature card. You could just tutor up this because it's also a giant, and that's kind of cool. That is kind of cool. But this one is so specific, and a 2 mana bite spell. It is instant speed, but still a 2 mana bite spell that requires you to have a very specific creature type on the board. And that creature not only has to be on the board, but it has to be good enough and powerful enough. And most giants will be, but some giants aren't. Like if you're hoping to have your what's the masked the Kaldheim changeling that's green that can exile an artifact. You know which one, or artifact or enchantment. You know which one I'm talking about. Mass Vandal. If you're using this on a Mass Vandal, well, that's only 2 power. Now that's not particularly good. You can do better with your red mana, or with your red spells. I mean, I don't really like this. I'm gonna give it a 1.6. It's just so narrow at that point that I don't think it has much of any value. It's a big foot though. So if you're in defeat, there you go. Well, what a way to end it. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.